Before this story begins, I want you to promise me something. Don't skip a single second. Because by the end of this journey, you won't just feel goosebumps, you'll believe in miracles. And if stories like this touch your heart, make sure you like this video and subscribe to the channel, because some dreams deserve to be heard by the whole world. The night the world met him, the stage lights of America's Got Talent shimmered like a galaxy waiting for a star. The judges sat in their seats, Simon Cowell with his familiar skeptical gaze, Heidi Klum smiling softly, Howie Mandel leaning forward with curiosity, and Sofia Vergara glowing with anticipation. The audience buzzed with excitement, but no one expected what was about to happen. Backstage stood a 27-year-old man from Cebu, Philippines. His name was Marco Reyes. Slim build. Jet black hair styled carefully into a classic pompadour. A white fitted blazer over a black shirt, tight black trousers, polished boots that reflected the lights. But it wasn't the outfit that carried the weight of the moment, it was the years of silent struggle behind his steady eyes. Marco wasn't born into applause. He was born into hardship. His father had been a jeepney driver, his mother a laundrywoman. As a child, Marco would sit beside an old radio in their small home, listening to the legendary voice of Elvis Presley. He didn't understand English back then, but he understood emotion. He would mimic the vibrato, the smooth growl, the soul. The neighbors would laugh and call him Little Elvis. At first it embarrassed him. Later, it became his identity. Life wasn't easy. When his father fell ill, Marco left college to work at a small karaoke bar in Cebu. Night after night, he sang for tourists who were more interested in their drinks than his voice. Sometimes they clapped. Sometimes they didn't even look up. But Marco never sang halfway. Every note carried his father's sacrifices, his mother's tired hands, and his own unspoken promise to change their story. One evening, a foreign tourist recorded him singing "Can't Help Falling in Love." The video was shaky, the sound imperfect, but the emotion was undeniable. The clip spread online. Comments flooded in, "He sounds just like Elvis. This gave me chills. He needs to be on AGT." Marco laughed when friends told him to audition. America felt impossibly far. But when his father passed away that same year, Marco stood at the funeral, staring at the sky, and whispered, "I'll make you proud, Papa." Months later, with borrowed money and a single suitcase, Marco boarded a plane to Los Angeles. He had never left the Philippines before. The city overwhelmed him, huge buildings, unfamiliar streets, a language he still struggled with. But when he stood in line for auditions, he felt calm. Because singing was the only language he truly needed. When Marco walked onto the AGT stage, Simon raised an eyebrow. "And who are you?" Simon asked. Marco smiled nervously. "My name is Marco Reyes. I'm from the Philippines. I work in a karaoke bar." The audience clapped politely. Simon tilted his head. "And what are you going to sing?" Marco paused. "A song by Elvis Presley." A faint murmur rippled through the crowd. Covering Elvis was dangerous territory. Legends cast long shadows. Simon leaned back, skeptical. The music began softly. A single piano note. Marco closed his eyes. For a split second, the stage disappeared. He was back in that tiny house in Cebu, sitting beside the radio. Then he sang. The first line was gentle, almost fragile. The audience leaned in. His voice wasn't just an imitation, it was reverence. It carried Elvis's warmth but also Marco's own heartbreak. When he reached the chorus, something shifted. His voice soared, rich, controlled, powerful. The kind of voice that doesn't just fill a room, it holds it captive. Heidi's jaw dropped slightly. Howie whispered, "Wow." Sofia placed her hand over her heart. And Simon, the king of criticism, stopped leaning back. He leaned forward. Marco moved with subtle charisma, the tilt of the head, the soft curl of the lip, the classic hip sway, but never in parody. It was homage, not impersonation. And when he hit the final high note, sustaining it with trembling emotion, you could hear someone in the audience sob. Silence followed. Not awkward silence. Sacred silence. Then the theater erupted. A standing ovation exploded like thunder. Tears streamed down Marco's face. He hadn't realized he was crying until he tasted salt on his lips. Simon stood up slowly, clapping. "I've seen thousands of auditions," he said when the noise settled. "And covering Elvis is one of the riskiest things you can do. But you didn't try to be him. You brought yourself into it. And that was incredible. Heidi nodded. You gave me goosebumps. Real goosebumps. Sophia smiled warmly. Your father is very proud tonight. Marco couldn't speak. He simply nodded, gripping the microphone as if it might float away. For yes echoed through the theater. But the journey didn't end there. As weeks passed, Marco faced new challenges. Online critics accused him of being just another Elvis copy. The pressure mounted. In rehearsals, producers encouraged him to try something different to show range. Marco struggled. Elvis was his comfort zone. Stepping away felt like losing part of himself. One night in his small rented apartment, he stared at his reflection. Who am I without Elvis? He whispered. The answer came quietly, you are the boy who sang for his father. For the semifinals, Marco chose a risky move. He blended an Elvis classic with a Filipino folk melody his mother used to hum while washing clothes. The arrangement began traditionally, then slowly transitioned into English. It was unexpected. Vulnerable. When he performed, the audience didn't just hear a singer. They heard a son. A dreamer. A bridge between cultures. This time, when the final note faded, Simon didn't wait. He reached forward and pressed the golden buzzer. Gold confetti rained down like sunlight. Marco dropped to his knees, overwhelmed. The stage that once felt distant from his life was now shining around him. Back home in Cebu, his mother watched from a small television, tears flowing freely. Neighbors crowded around her, cheering. For the first time, their little street felt connected to the world. Marco didn't win the entire competition. But he didn't need to. Because something greater happened. He found his own voice. Record labels called. Concert invitations followed. And more importantly, young kids from small towns began posting videos online saying, if Marco can do it, so can I. Months later, Marco returned to the Philippines for his first sold-out concert. Before singing, he looked at the crowd and said, dreams don't ask where you come from. They ask how much you're willing to believe. He ended the night with the same Elvis song he sang at his audition, but this time, he added a final line in Filipino, Para sa'yo, Papa. For you, Dad. The audience swayed, thousands of phone lights glowing like stars. And in that moment, Marco realized something powerful, he was never just imitating a legend. He was honoring one while becoming his own. So if you're watching this right now, feeling small, feeling unseen, feeling like your dream is too far away, remember Marco. Remember the boy with the old radio. Remember that stages are built for those brave enough to step on them. And if this story gave you even a single chill, a single spark of hope, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Because the next story might be yours. Sometimes, all it takes is one voice, and the courage to let it be heard. Sparkle's musical notes. Before you scroll, before you click away, ask yourself one question: what if the next 10 minutes could change the way you see dreams forever? Stay with me until the end, because this story isn't just about a performance. It's about proof that no matter where you come from, the world can still hear you. And if stories like this move you, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel, because every dream shared here deserves your support. The night felt electric inside the Grand Theater of America's Got Talent. The audience shimmered under golden lights, thousands of faces waiting to be surprised. On the judges' panel sat the ever-observant Simon Cowell, glamorous Heidi Klum, witty Howie Mandel, and vibrant Sofia Vergara. They had seen magicians, acrobats, prodigies, and heartbreakers. But they had never seen him. Backstage stood a 29-year-old Filipino man named Daniel Cruz. He adjusted the collar of his crisp white suit jacket, inspired by the king of rock and roll himself, Elvis Presley. His black hair was styled into a smooth pompadour, each strand carefully shaped. But his hands trembled. Not from fear of failure, but from the weight of hope. Daniel grew up in a narrow alley in Manila. His family lived in a small home made of concrete blocks and tin roofing that rattled during storms. His father worked long hours as a tricycle driver. His mother sold homemade snacks outside a local school. Music was never a career option, it was a luxury. Yet every Sunday, Daniel would borrow his uncle's old CD player and play Elvis songs on repeat. He didn't just sing along, he studied every note, every breath, every pause. When other kids played basketball, Daniel practiced in front of a cracked mirror. He'd wrap a towel around his shoulders like a cape and bow dramatically. His parents would laugh, but behind their smiles was worry. Dreams didn't pay bills. At 18, Daniel began working as a hotel janitor to support his younger siblings. After cleaning hallways and emptying trash bins, he would sneak into the ballroom when it was empty. He'd stand on the small stage and imagine applause. Sometimes he sang softly into his mop handle like it was a microphone. The echo of the empty room became his only audience. Years passed. Responsibilities grew heavier. His father developed health problems. Medical bills piled up. Daniel nearly gave up singing completely. "Maybe this is just a childhood fantasy," he once told his mother. She shook her head. "God doesn't put a voice in your heart for no reason," she said quietly. One night, during a staff party at the hotel, Daniel was pushed onto the stage by coworkers who knew about his Elvis obsession. Reluctantly, he began singing "Suspicious Minds." The room fell silent. Phones lifted into the air. When he finished, the applause was deafening. A guest from the United States approached him afterward. "You need to audition for AGT," she insisted. Daniel laughed at the idea. He didn't have money for airfare. He didn't even have a passport. But sometimes, when destiny knocks, it doesn't stop. The guest helped start an online fundraiser. Within weeks, strangers donated enough to send him to Los Angeles. Standing on the AGT stage months later, Daniel felt the memory of every sacrifice in his chest. Simon asked, "Why are you here?" Daniel swallowed hard. "Because my family believes in me more than I believe in myself." The crowd murmured softly. "And what will you sing?" Heidi asked. "Elvis Presley," Daniel replied, his voice steady now. Simon smirked slightly. "That's brave." The band began to play a slow, soulful intro to "If I Can Dream." Daniel closed his eyes. The first note left his lips like a whisper carried by wind. It was smooth, warm, haunting. As the song built, so did his confidence. His voice didn't mimic, it honored. It carried a depth shaped by long nights of exhaustion and silent tears. When he reached the powerful high notes near the end, something magical happened. His voice cracked, not from weakness, but from emotion. And instead of pulling back, he leaned into it. Raw. Real. Human. Heidi wiped her eyes. Sophia whispered, "Oh my God." Howie shook his head in disbelief. And Simon, who rarely shows emotion, looked genuinely stunned. The final note rang through the theater, strong and unwavering. Silence. Then an eruption. The audience jumped to their feet. A standing ovation thundered through the hall. Daniel covered his face, overwhelmed. He wasn't just hearing applause. He was hearing validation for every moment he doubted himself. Simon spoke first. "Daniel, I've heard many Elvis tributes. But what you did was personal. It wasn't karaoke. It was storytelling. That was outstanding." For Yes sent him to the next round. But success brought new challenges. Online critics compared him endlessly to Elvis. "He'll never be the real king," some wrote. The pressure nearly crushed him. During rehearsals for the semifinals, Daniel felt lost. Was he living in someone else's shadow? One evening, he video called his mother. "What if they're right?" he asked. She smiled gently through the screen. "You're not trying to be Elvis. You're trying to be Daniel." Those words changed everything. For the semifinals, Daniel made a bold decision. He performed an original song, one inspired by Elvis's style but infused with Filipino soul and lyrics about sacrifice and resilience. It began softly, almost like a lullaby, then built into a soaring anthem. Midway through the performance, the camera captured Simon leaning forward intensely. The audience swayed with phone lights raised. Daniel's voice carried both power and vulnerability. He wasn't copying anymore. He was creating. When the song ended, Simon didn't hesitate. He slammed the golden buzzer. Gold confetti poured from the ceiling like sunlight breaking through clouds. Daniel fell to his knees, crying. In Manila, his family screamed in joy, hugging each other as neighbors gathered around their television. Although Daniel didn't win first place in the finale, he won something greater: respect. Record producers reached out. Concert invitations flooded in. He returned home not as the Filipino Elvis, but as an artist in his own right. Months later, he performed in a packed arena in Manila. Before his final song, he looked at the crowd and said, "I once sang to empty rooms. Tonight, I sing to you. Never let your circumstances silence your gift." He ended with a tribute to Elvis, but this time, he added a verse in Tagalog, honoring his roots. The crowd sang along, thousands of voices united. And somewhere beyond the lights, beyond the noise, beyond the stage, there was peace. Because Daniel finally understood that goosebumps don't come from perfection. They come from truth. So if you're watching this and you feel like your dream is too big for your small beginning, remember this story. Greatness doesn't start on big stages. It starts in small rooms with big faith. If this touched your heart even a little, take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Share it with someone who needs hope today. Because sometimes, the next voice the world needs to hear might be yours. Sparkle's musical notes. Don't blink. Don't skip. Because the next few minutes might remind you why you started dreaming in the first place. And if by the end of this story you feel even one chill run down your spine, promise yourself you'll like this video and subscribe to the channel, because stories like this deserve to travel far beyond one screen. The stage of America's biggest talent show glowed under blinding lights. The iconic red backdrop of America's Got Talent shimmered as the crowd buzzed with anticipation. On the judges' panel sat the famously hard-to-impress Simon Cowell, the elegant Heidi Klum, the ever-playful Howie Mandel, and the radiant Sofia Vergara. They had seen it all. Or at least they thought they had. Backstage stood a 26-year-old man from Davao, Philippines. His name was Rafael Mendoza. His suit was white with subtle gold embroidery along the lapels, inspired by the legendary style of Elvis Presley. His hair was slicked back into a polished pompadour, sharp and classic. But his eyes carried years of quiet sacrifice. Rafael didn't grow up surrounded by music studios or professional training. He grew up surrounded by the scent of gasoline and saltwater. His father was a fisherman who left home before sunrise and returned after dark. His mother worked at a small roadside eatery. Money was always tight. Electricity sometimes flickered off in the evenings. But whenever power returned, Rafael would rush to turn on an old secondhand television and watch grainy clips of Elvis performances on YouTube. He didn't just admire Elvis. He studied him. The posture. The breath control. The subtle smile before a high note. But more than that, he studied the emotion. He sings like he means every word, Rafael once told his younger sister. At school, classmates teased him for his obsession. "You're stuck in the past," they'd laugh. But Rafael didn't care. When he sang, he felt seen. When he sang, the noise of doubt faded. At 19, he gave up a scholarship opportunity to help his family after a typhoon destroyed their fishing boat. He worked construction during the day, carrying cement sacks heavier than his own body. At night, he sang at local fiestas for small tips. His hands became rough, but his voice remained smooth. One evening, during a town festival, the power cut out mid-performance. The microphone died. The speakers went silent. The crowd groaned. Rafael took a deep breath and kept singing, without music, without amplification. His voice carried through the dark like a lighthouse beam. People lifted their